Hey, it's Coach Taylor from SmarterTeamTraining.com. I've had lots of questions on my own and people sending questions and emails to me. I've actually spoken with several doctors now in the area of metabolism and sleep. And I actually found out locally when I got a chance to speak to an exercise science club meeting with students, and I had a gentleman actually come in and sit in and listen in on what we had a conversation about. I followed up with him, just kind of kept in touch, and have actually developed a pretty decent friendship with the man. His name is Dr. Devon from Towson University. His background is in metabolism and sleep combined. He actually showed up at the facility. We must have sat down and talked for almost 2 hours about fads and trends and gurus in the field and dropping names and books and things and research we should all be reading. So it's cool, again, if you go out of your way to try to inspire greatness in others, you will just ironically find someone there that will help make a positive impact on either your life or the lives that you get a chance to touch. So, Devon, man, I really appreciate the opportunity to get you on the phone here, man. I know you and I both have been pumped to get on this show and have this conversation, so I'm looking for an outstanding conversation with you, my man.
Rob, it's great to be with you. Very excited to have the conversation.
Dr. Devon, man, I know we've gone back and forth a couple times and talked a little bit about your background, my background. We probably just touched the surface, to be very honest, but I want to know about the passionate person you are. I mean, again, I've met you several times now. We've interacted on phones, in person, going to lunch. I mean, a bunch of different things. I can't share with the listeners how much you are passionate about this field, or how much you are also willing to help others, how approachable you are. I mean, I don't want to oversell and underdeliver here, but you're just a big-time dude, and I think you're trying to do a great thing. But I want to know, and I want to also be able to share you as a passionate individual, man. Where's your passion for the field come from the research aspect to the academic aspect to even just wanting to become a teacher? And do me a little bit of a favor and just tell me what you got going on now, my man.
Yeah, let me give you just a brief background, because I think that helps set the stage here. I went to Penn State University, got my undergraduate degree. Prior to at some point between that and my master's program, I decided, hey, I wanted to do research in exercise science. Always liked physiology, and I played sports growing up, and that was an interest of mine. At some point, I decided, hey, I would like to do research. I went to LSU, and my area of interest was cardiovascular physiology and the impact of exercise, diet in those with chronic diseases. People with obesity, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, metabolic syndrome. Prior to coming to Towson, I took an instructor position at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, and two things happened to me that changed the trajectory of my career, and I think that is where my passion really started. And those two things, I was hired as an instructor to help to conduct clinical trials that involved exercise and weight loss. Specifically, we were looking at exercise combined with low-fat diets and low-carb diets. That was one of our big trials. And initially, I wanted the job because I needed a job. And I sort of rolled my eyes when people started to talk about low-carb diets. I was involved in the training because we exercised them at the university. And there was one instance that really stands out in my mind. And I was having a conversation with one of the women who was involved in the study, who was a subject in this trial. And she was very, very depressed. She was in the trial for a few weeks. And I said, so what's going on? You're not losing weight and everything else, and things aren't changing for me. She was very discouraged, and she said, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm cutting my calories, and I'm exercising really hard, and I'm not losing weight. And she was following our advice, and I believe she was in this low-fat group. That's where it started for me, where, hey, exercise and diet, we need to get those things correct before we can get people to lose weight. And one of those things is not cutting calories, but ingesting calories, the right quality of calorie. I do not believe now, and after going through the research, doing some of my own studies, that it's not about the calorie quantity. It's the quality of the calorie. And we can circle back and talk about that a little bit later on. The other thing that really changed my way of thinking is when I first got to Hopkins, we met, the investigative team met with some of the folks from pulmonary medicine. And they said, we hear you're doing weight loss trials. And one of their first questions was, you're doing weight loss trials. Why aren't you looking at sleep? And that was just a game changer for me. And that is really the moment where I think I started to, it was the moment where I started to appreciate what sleep does and what its effect is on weight loss, metabolism, and our ability to exercise. So those two things, I think, really changed my career. Now I'm at Towson, which I'm extremely excited about, because not only am I able to continue research that's been ongoing, but I'm also working with undergraduate students, and I get to influence them, talk about research, engage them in the research process. So I'm really psyched about being at Towson and to explore some of the hypotheses that I have started prior to me coming to Towson.
Right off the bat, I obviously want to talk to you about the concept of sleep apnea, and you and I had that conversation, and I think there's a stereotype. If I have to draw that picture, I got a 50-plus-year-old man that's overweight, is under-exercised, and he's snoring when he's sleeping. But to be honest with everybody, from what I'm understanding and learning, is sleep apnea can happen at various levels throughout your life. So can you do me a favor? Can you define a little bit about what sleep apnea is from a clinical setting, and then also from some of the things we might be seeing on a regular basis? And then are there sleep patterns that are preferred to hopefully discourage sleep apnea from actually occurring or existing in our lives?
Yeah, so sleep apnea is a serious medical condition characterized by obstruction of the airway as we are sleeping, and it leads to arousals from sleep. It disrupts the sleep pattern, and it also causes desaturations and oxygen desaturations. All of these things have dire consequences on cardiovascular health and metabolic health for that matter. And as you describe, it typically occurs in overweight men who are middle to older age, and also associated, I think it's nearly 90% of obese diabetics have sleep apnea. However, it can occur in younger individuals too, and it's really characterized or associated with the very thick necks, obesity, especially central obesity, because as we are lying back and we are sleeping, there's this huge mechanical load on the upper airway, and that is what is closing that airway off. So you have these arousals from sleep, the airway closes, you wake up, choke, and there's either a total elimination of breathing or a reduction in ventilation. So what we've been recently just did at Towson is we've actually been screening for sleep apnea in members of the Towson football team. And what we found, because as you know, we've got large guys, especially offensive and defensive linemen, who have all those characteristics that are associated with sleep apnea. And we want to see, well, what is the prevalence of it in a collegiate football? And we know they're well conditioned, but they are large. And we've seen this, people have reported this in the NFL. And the rate of, I think the incident or prevalence of sleep apnea in NFL players is about 10 to 14%. We actually, in 51 guys that we tested on the team, we saw that there were 4 of them that actually had mild cases of sleep apnea. And this is critical because even the mild cases that aren't even associated with some of these symptoms, like fatigue, snoring, although they were snoring, even those individuals have some underlying cardiovascular issues. So it's really important that we get these guys treated, not only for their personal health, but think about performance-wise. If guys are fatigued and tired throughout the day, they're not going to perform well athletically or academically, for that matter. And incidentally, Reggie White, I'm sure you remember Reggie White, Minister of Defense, Green Bay Packers. He actually died of sleep apnea, and he has a sleep apnea foundation, which is dedicated toward educating people about sleep apnea, and I believe they donate some money also for research. So this is a huge issue. And as far as sleep patterns go, I will say that I'm not a sleep expert, and I think there are people who can speak better about sleep and the different stages of sleep. I will say that the common recommendation is around 7 to 9 hours per night, and it takes about 90 minutes for someone to go through all the sleep stages and then cycle back through. And we're looking at 5 or 6 of those sleep stages per night is needed. It's going to vary depending on activity levels, certainly. One thing that I would recommend that people who are interested in sleep and promoting good sleep and an environment of good sleep is to first get screened for a sleep disorder, because you can do everything right. And if you have a sleep disorder, especially sleep apnea, it's not going to work. And so when we want to get good sleep and we have eliminated the issue of a sleep disorder, I think we need to develop good sleep habits with regard to going to bed at the same time every night, getting up. And one thing people can do is actually get rid of the alarm clock, go to sleep one night, and see when you wake up. And that's probably a good indication of how much sleep you actually need. And that's assuming also that the quality of sleep is good.
You and I have gone back and forth a couple of times about the concept of metabolism, and one of the things that irks me is hearing somebody say, well, I have a high metabolism, and they don't even know what that means. I think it's a common statement that's made, and it makes me laugh, to be honest. So can you do me a favor and walk me through how can we positively impact our metabolism? And then there's also been an ongoing conversation about calories in versus calories out, and how exercise relates to metabolism and potentially even maintaining body fat. Can you walk me through a little bit of that scenario, please?
Yeah, let me go with the calories in, calories out first, because I think that's important, and it helps to answer the second question. And the calories in, calories out, this idea that we can, if we want to maintain weight, we need to consciously, knowingly balance the calories that we consume and the calories that we expend. And this has probably been the most damaging piece of medical advice given within the last 30 to 40 years. I'm 37 years old. I have never consciously counted my calories and sat down at the breakfast table and said, okay, I'm going to take this many calories in, and then I'm going to go for a run and burn it off. And by doing that, I can maintain my weight. To be fair, we can starve ourselves. We can starve ourselves and lose weight. We know that. We can shove food down our face and gain weight. We know that. But that doesn't answer the question of why people are gaining weight, or more specifically, why are they becoming obese, or that excess body fat that no one wants. So I think that the question is, and it's a behavior driving physiology. Well, I think people should really consider, how is your behavior driving your physiology? What we should be asking is, how is your physiology driving behavior? people who are overweight are going to take in more calories because they have a lot of mass. And the key here, I think, getting to metabolism is how do we lose fat? And we lose fat by getting control of our hormones. And one hormone in particular plays a very important role in the regulation of fat metabolism. And that hormone is insulin. Insulin facilitates the uptake of glucose into the cells, or our carbohydrates. But what it also does, when insulin levels are high, fat cannot be liberated from the fat tissue, the adipose tissue. So in terms of controlling our metabolism, I think one thing that we need to be very aware of is, and this goes back to the calorie, the quality of the calorie, which is reduce the amount of carbohydrates. If you reduce the amount of carbohydrates in your diet, then what's going to happen? Insulin levels are going to be lowered, and in turn, fat is going to be able to be extracted from the fat tissue and to be used as an energy source. It's not going to be stored there and stuck there. And that's really the key to weight loss. It's not balancing calories in, calories out. And if you get control of that, and what we're talking about really is controlling satiety, because we have a lot. The thinnest person on earth has over 30,000 calories of energy stored as fat, enough to last for days. And we want to tap into that. Someone who wants to lose weight needs to tap into that. And I mentioned insulin, but there are other hormones that also have an effect on that. But if we can control our diet, then things are going to fall into place. And we're going to allow our bodies to use the fat we have stored as energy, as an energy source. And we're also not going to be hungry all the time and be driven to eat.
When you're talking metabolism, generally the conversation quickly jumps to diet. And I want to talk about the concept of either high carb, high fat, high protein diets and their potential impact on metabolism. And then I also want to discuss, is it possible for someone to be a carb burner, fat burner, protein burner? And if so, how can we identify these individuals and enhance our body's capability?
In my opinion, based on what I've been reading, we want to be fat burners. All of us. All of us. Those people who are trying to lose weight, and I think for the most part, those people looking to have an athletic advantage. And fat is stored in such high quantities in our body. And we want to use that. We don't want to use carbohydrates. If we look at a long distance runner, marathoner, ultramarathoner, cyclist, they want to exercise at a high capacity for a long period of time. They want to have a very a steady supply of energy. Fat provides that energy. Carbohydrates do too as well. And typically, people have always thought that we need to carb load in order to enhance our glycogen stores in our muscle. And if we have those glycogen stores in such high quantities, we can tap into those at very high exercise intensities. But if you're in a long distance race, you want a steady supply of energy. And if you can tap into your fat stores at very high intensities, why wouldn't you do that? Because now you are getting into fat burning. And what you're doing is preserving the amount of carbohydrates, or specifically glycogen, in our bodies. And you're preserving that. Instead, you are using the fats as your energy source. And I think in order to promote that process for an athlete, that person needs to limit their carbohydrate ingestion. And this will, it may take some time, 4 weeks or more, but now you start to switch into this fat burning mode. And I think for the most part, all athletes can benefit from this. The other thing with regard to strength athletes, power lifters, even football players, they can benefit this. I just read an article the other week, and there was an attached commentary to it. And the title of the commentary was Tax Sugar, Save Muscle. And what the commentary was referring to was an article done in mice who were insulin resistant. And they found that it was very difficult for the mice to hypertrophy, to increase strength gains, who were insulin resistant compared to those who were not. So I think that one of the issues about carbohydrate usage, insulin, and potentially leading to insulin resistance is that it can actually disrupt muscle growth. So I think there's another reason to transition into a diet which is reduction in carbohydrates, increase in fat intake.
When you're talking performance and health, I think eating and sleeping are just two of the variables, and I do want to address the concept of hydration, if you wouldn't mind walking us through that a little bit. And what have you seen as the importance of hydration in the overall health and performance-related aspects of the active lives that we live? And if you wouldn't mind, what are some potential suggestions from the clinical setting as far as how hydrated we should be?
Yeah, so actually hydration isn't really a big area of mine. And I know we've talked before about you want to reach out to Tim Noakes, who is an expert in that area. And I think he could give you some really good information as far as the hydration guidelines for athletes now. What I will say about hydration is that it's important to be adequately hydrated in order to perfuse the kidneys, because the kidneys are processing the waste, and especially if we are high fat and proteins are adequate, then this becomes especially important from a clinical point of view, from an athletic point of view.
Dr. Devon, man, I know you're making a big-time impact on a lot of people that you get an opportunity to work with, not only in the clinical setting, the college setting. I know you're getting the opportunity to present and speak around the country now. I know you're trying to do as much as you can to just create awareness for a lot of things that you are researching, from the sleep and the metabolism side of things. If somebody had any questions about anything we were discussing here and they wanted to reach out to you, I mean, how can they go about reaching out to you personally and then finding out more information about what you have going on, my man?
Oh, go to my faculty webpage. So Towson.edu, type in my name in the search engine, and I will pop up, and you can get my contact information right there. I'm in the process of updating it so I can post information about what I'm doing. There's a link to my publications, and I welcome anyone to please reach out, and it's nice to have conversations about the topics that we've been discussing.
Well, again, Devon, man, I appreciate the opportunity to learn from you, to obviously bounce ideas back and forth. It's been a cool conversation for the listeners. Just to give you a heads up, Devon and I have both talked about his strengths and weaknesses in the field and my strengths and weaknesses in the field. And it's cool just to have a conversation with two professionals and talk about things that have worked for both of us and things that we know now that we wish we would have known then and back in the day type scenario. So if you are interested in metabolism, sleep, hydration, and some of the other aspects of performance, I would suggest that you not only reach out to Devon from an aspect of what he knows, but how gracious and humble he is to actually connect you with other people in the field to actually help put you in touch with an expert and to get more information from someone who has a background in research or writing books or more information about a specific topic. But Devon, man, I appreciate the honesty that I get from you when you and I both have a conversation, and I enjoy just getting a chance to talk shop and have somebody at your level be a resource for me and my team, my man. I look forward to this being a launch pad for us to do many, many things down the road, and I look forward to keeping in touch, my man.
Great. Me too, Rob, and it was a pleasure, and hopefully we can do it again.